Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the channel, and today we'll be talking about what I would do with the Friday the 13th franchise. What I would do with this franchise. Now, to me, this is interesting because any, I think Friday the 13th is out of all the slashes. Friday the 13th, to me, my opinion, it is the one franchise. It is a big playground. Now you probably ask me, what do you mean it's a big playground? Think about it. Every Friday the 13th film has a different tone. It really doesn't follow the previous film. It's every Friday the 13th film, it's its own thing. Am I wrong? I'm not. So the way, I'm not wrong about that. The Friday the 13th franchise, it is a playground. It's really whatever you want to do. I see Friday the 13th as a playground. I see this franchise as a playground, and you know what I would do with this franchise. And this is my opinion only. What I would do with this franchise is break it down. I would break it down, and studios sometimes want more than one script. I would write 3 different scripts for the studio and let them approve upon them. Now, the thing is, how do you make Jason scary? Because they did it in the 2009 remake that made him scary. I think the biggest thing to do, whatever Jason film you do, which I will get into in a minute, you're going to need you're going to need to take elements from the remake. I love the remake. I'm not just saying that because I love the remake, but you're going to need to take elements from the remake, because the remake grounded Jason again. It made Jason scary. It made Jason somewhat a human again that lived off the land. So you kind of need to take elements from the remake, from part 2, from part 3, and part 4, and kind of combine them. That's how I feel about the remake from 2009. It really combined the first 3, Jason-wise. Now, as I said, how you make Jason scary, just take elements from the remake, basically. The environment, the environment needs to be changed up. A lot of people saying, well, why don't you just put it in? Yeah, it's going to be set in Camp Crystal Lake, of course, but do we want the summertime vibe, Camp Crystal Lake type of vibe? No, I don't. Yeah, you can do what we had in Friday the 13th Part 1, the original. You could do what we did in Part 2. You could do what we did in Part 3, 4, and 5, but with a twist, you can do that, of course. You can do that, but you gotta have a twist in it. You can do the same thing. And maybe even I would go as far as having a Friday the 13th film set in the mid-80s, mid-90s, just to capture on that film. But that's something too, Okay, we know what we're going to do with the story. We know we're going to throw some twists and turns in there, add some new lore, bring Jason back to the basics. Okay, that's cool. That's dandy. We got that out of the way. But now what do we do with the whole plot? What do we do? Like I said, we got the atmosphere already talked about. We got Jason talked about. We got his look, just a basic Jason look from something from part 2, 3, or 4, or the remix, something like that look. So we got that kind of covered. Now the biggest thing is, now you're in a spot of, okay, you got all that taking place. You're going to be having in Camp Crystal Lake. You know how many counselors or kids, whatever you want. You want 4, you want 5. Take your choice. You got that covered. You got these 3 scripts. Okay, now what you want to do? First option, do you want a remake? I feel like a remake is probably the smartest option. Do I want to do I want a Friday the 13th remake again? Not really, but it's going to need to happen in order for this franchise to move forward. They can do a remake. Or you can do a sequel to the 2009 remake, which I really want a sequel to that. But guess what? It will be kind of late in a time we've done past that. A sequel to the 2009 film should have been what? 2010, 2012, at the least 2016. But the stupid lawsuit that was going on and stuff the Paramount New Line was going on back in 2009 They make a sequel happen. So we can rule out a sequel to the 2009. That's off the table completely. There's no way that could happen. But I would bring Deckard Mears back. I will bring Deckard Mears back. Now, this is. Do you continue with the original franchise? Because how do you continue on with the original franchise? Do you make a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason without Freddy? Making, you know what I mean? Making a Jason sequel that's connected to them events. But then you run into problems because the way I look at it, Freddy vs. Jason is not a Jason film, it's more so a Freddy film. Because Jason in that film has so much more lore. Jason's scared of water. There's really no mentions of any of the past films, specifically the first three. You can say Jason Goes to Hell was probably connected, but still then, there's no callbacks or mentions to any of the past Friday the 13th films. So do you really want to make a sequel to that? No. You want less confusion, possible with this Friday the 13th franchise. And again, like I said, this is a franchise that's very all over the place. You can really do anything you want. Will people get mad? Of course people will get mad. But guess what? We gotta have some type of, different flavor. If you have something too often, you're gonna get tired of it. And, okay, well, we done ruled out not continuing on with the events of Freddy vs. Jason without Freddy. Okay, do you make a sequel to Jason X? But how do you do that? How do you make a sequel to Jason X? If you make a sequel to Jason X, okay, you continuing with that franchise. But then again, you still running with that crazy timeline. Some of it's not intertwined and connected, especially Jason Takes Manhattan. I feel like Jason Takes Manhattan, even that film, it's on its own pedestal, it's on its own little timeline. So do you make a sequel to Jason X? I mean, maybe. But then again, how many films do you want to homage to? You run into so many problems with that. Okay, Jason X had the question: Do you make a direct sequel to Jason Goes to Hell? Okay, but then you run into another problem. His body was destroyed, so are you going to kind of say? You see what I'm saying? You will go back to that type of story. So you kind of doing the same thing. Okay, I have the question. Okay, do you make a Friday the 13th film that's loosely canon with a copycat killer? You couldn't really. I mean, yes and then no. I mean, if you do it, people get salty about it. But could you do a copycat killer while Jason's on the land? Yes. I mean, that's something that's possible. You can do a loose sequel to the original franchise and have a copycat killer, but actually have the real Jason in there killing. It's kind of like a whodunit. Is the real Jason back? Is it this copycat? You could do that. Will people get mad? Sure. Do you do a clean slate? Do you continue after the first one and ignore part 2 and ignore part 3? Do you do that, or do you ignore part 3 and all of them and just have them 2 canon, or do you have them 3 canon? Do you just keep 4 canon? Do you keep them 6 canon? But if you do keep one of those films canon and you do the Halloween treatment, you're going to need to do it with part 1, ignore everything after part 1, or ignore everything after part 2, or ignore everything after part 3, or ignore everything after the final chapter. Them are really your only options. Out of them are the only ones you can clean the slate with. So my options is remake the franchise. My second choice would be doing a clean slate, which, ignore, picking what you want to ignore, retcon. Do you do a copycat killer? Do you make a sequel to the 2009 remake? Do you do a loosely sequel to that film? What do you do? Because to me, Friday the 13th is going to have a big comeback. Whenever it comes back, it's going to be one of the biggest comebacks. It really is. And just, it's gonna be something. Trust me. Um, but with that being said, I don't even know the answer. Like I could just spitball ideas. I couldn't even write a script because if I wrote a script, I would have to take a year just spitballing and writing down stuff to actually get a full script written. It would take me at least 2 years. I'm not even joking, and possibly have 2 scripts written because what do you do with this franchise? What do you do with it? And then you go, okay, well, what do you want to do with Jason? Do you want to make him a zombie? Do you want to make him more of a human like he was in part 2 to the final chapter and the remake? Do you want to make him scary again? Do you want to kind of go back to some comedy elements? What do you want to do with this franchise? Do you want to keep it scary? Do you want to kind of make it a parody? What do you want to do? And do you want to make Jason slow? Do you want to make him angry? What you run into so many things because again, Friday the 13th is, to me, it is one of those franchises you got to be careful with because if you don't be, if you don't be careful with this franchise, you're really going to run into the spot of, okay, we're just doing the same thing. And that's one of the reasons why I love the 2009 remake because they looked at that concept and said, okay, we got to do this thing different. Because, again, with Halloween, I feel like Halloween, that franchise is kind of getting into that state because they keep wanting to do the Laurie and Michael timeline. This is off topic, but Halloween is starting to get into that kind of spot. And hopefully Blumhouse keeps the rights. I really do think Blumhouse is going to keep the rights to Halloween. So I don't think Halloween will fall into that category. But Friday the 13th is stuck in that category of you got to do, it's just really hard to explain because like with Halloween, you can do anything with Halloween. And not a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that people still want the same Laurie and Michael for many more years. I don't, but you see what I'm saying with the Halloween franchise. So many timelines, so many opportunities, so much stuff going on with the Child's Play franchise. So much stuff going on. You can retcon stuff. You can do. There's so much stuff with that. With the Hellraiser series, some of it's loosely canon, but still, it's there. The Saw franchise, same thing. So many stuff to do. With the Friday 13th, to me, you're limited. I'm probably made people angry, but it's true. Friday the 13th that's why it's not my favorite horror franchise. I like the character Jason, but the films as a whole, I just have a few that I love. That may make people angry, but it's true. As I've gotten older, there's only a couple of these films that I enjoy just because I feel like every Friday the 13th film is the same thing, And again, there's a couple of Friday the 13th films that I do love, which I would get into later. But there's a couple of Friday the 13th films that I really do adore, that I really do love, because they do something different. Because Friday the 13th has backed herself up in a corner, to me, where almost everything is so similar. Even if Jason Takes Manhattan, similar. Everything's so similar. Whether it be the way Jason looks or his environment, it's the same thing. Friday the 13th Part 1 is the same thing as Part 2. Friday the 13th Part 3, it's the same thing as Part 2 and 1. The final chapter, I love the final chapter because it's different. But you see what I'm saying? It's very mind-blowing how Friday the 13th survived. Because the first 3 were just blatantly the same thing. And then the New Beginning, yeah, there was a copycat killer, but it was still kind of the same thing. You kind of just run into those spots of you got to do something different. And Friday the 13th is one of those franchises that's really backed herself up in the corner and really never tried anything different. I think the smartest way to go with this franchise is to reboot or remake everything. If you don't want to do that, okay, well, you can just have the first 2 canon, but that's it. because this is such a delicate franchise. You can easily, as I was saying, you can easily make it the same thing we've seen before, and it's going to be a flop at the box office and kill slashers again. You know, and I don't want that. I don't want for Jason's comeback to kill the slashers off again. I don't want that. And you can really run into that spot of the same thing, the same thing. You know, that's and as and there was a script where Jason was going to be in snow. I want that to be adapted into a film. You know, because again, different, and you can't really just say, okay, we'll make Jason different. No, the counselors have to be different. The environment, the kills, the gore, the lake as a whole has to be different. You just can't sit there and just do everything beat for beat. You can't. And you know, some franchises, when early stages get wiped out because of that, like they do. You know, Scream 3, for example. That Scream 3 had a bad script, but the problem with Scream 3 is, well, Scream 3 was the same thing as the first two. So part of Scream 3's downfall, yes, was a bad script, but as well, you had the problem of the same thing as the first two, not moving the franchise forward. That's something too, you know, I'm so happy that Blumhouse is probably going to keep the rights to Halloween, because I know what Blumhouse is going to do. They're going to evolve and move the franchise forward and not do 10 steps back. And even with Halloween Kills, they're moving the franchise forward, which makes me so excited, because that's what I want. And it's something different in the Halloween franchise. I know I'm talking about the Halloween franchise while I'm doing a Friday the 13th video, but it ties in. You know, like it really does tie in, because Halloween franchise, they're doing something different over here. The Child's Play series doing something different over here. Hellraiser's coming back, probably doing something different over here. Saw's coming back, hopefully doing something different. So you got all these franchises. Why, yes, Friday the 13th is under a lawsuit, but when that lawsuit is up and the time has come for a new film, what do? You just can't do the same thing. Like, you cannot do the same thing with the Friday the 13th. You know, you cannot do it. And that's thing too, the off topic again, but it ties into the video, and I will stand by this. If you remake Halloween in, I say 4 to 10 years, which is realistic. I do think in the next 4 to 10 years they will remake this franchise. If they do the same thing, Laurie and Michael and all that, no one's gonna like it. You know, if next year Saw, it's the same thing as the first three, very detective-ish, then guess what? Not a lot of people's gonna like that. Because I think that's one reason why not a lot of people like Jigsaw, because it was the same thing, you know. And I'm like that. I have to have variety when it comes to horror films. You know, I love a straightforward continuity. I love a straightforward continuity and straightforward timeline. But I love something different. And as I said multiple times, in your third installment, gotta do something a little brave. You know, in your second installment, gotta kind of branch out a little bit. And in the fourth one, you kind of gotta go back to the basics. You know, what makes the franchise. You know, I can really do a horror franchise, especially with Michael or Jason or Chucky, because I know what works. And that's one of the things is, I've got so much experience with films, you know, just from watching them. I can tell you from person to person what works and doesn't work. I can tell you doing the same thing isn't going to fly. That is not going to fly. I don't care what any genre you're in, it is not going to fly if you do the same thing. And it's one of the reasons why the Paranormal Activity franchise got so tiring. Is after part 3, guess what? Same thing. So you really can't do that. I know this is a long video, but if you're staying to the end, let me know in the comments below. I really didn't plan it to be a long video, it just came to be a long video. But this is really how I feel, you know. You got to branch out. Friday the 13th, it's time to branch out. Yes, they branched out with Takes Manhattan, but it still was almost like the same thing. You know, branch it out. Give Friday the 13th a score. The only time I think really, in my opinion, the only time it really had like boom, 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 all like type of score was with the remake. You know, so give Friday the 13th new life. Halloween has had new life in it. Look at the Curse of Michael Myers. I love the Curse of Michael Myers. Um, you know, say what you want about Rob Zombie's Halloween, but look at what he did with that. You know, you have to branch out with this Friday the 13th franchise, and as I talked about other horror franchises, they've branched out way early. And I'll be brutally honest, and I may make people angry, but I'm surprised Friday the 13th has lasted as long as it did, and it's still popular. I love Friday the 13th, but it just surprises me that it's lasted this long. So if you did enjoy the video, big thumbs up, please subscribe, let me know in the comments below, what do you think, you know, what should happen to this franchise? Should they keep it dead in the water? Should they bring it back as a remake? I just think just remake everything. Like, just not remake everything, but Friday the 13th wise, remake it. Because you gotta do something different with this franchise. You got to. So, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do.